Hi friends, I'm Jess and welcome to the Hexed Library, where I post reading, writing, book, and planner related content a couple of times a week. Today's going to be my bingo board from hell wrap up for April. If you can't tell by that intro, I'm a little behind. What happened was, and we've talked about this in all of the live streams that I've been doing, I've still been doing the live streams, I filmed this video and it took me like 2-ish hours and it had no audio. And I just was very upsetty spaghetti about it and decided that I didn't give a fuck anymore and I wasn't making any videos because I was pissed the fuck off. And well, now we're back. You will have less good audio quality because I'm not using my expensive fancy microphone because I continuously am having problems with it, not recording any audio, which defeats the purpose of having nice audio. And yeah, so let's get into the books that I read in April and where they fit at on the bingo board from hell. In the month of April, I read 25 books for a total of 6,004 pages. My average rating was a 4 out of 5 stars. I think 4 is the highest average all year, but it's definitely not the first month that I've had a 4. I'm pretty happy with that, honestly. I didn't read a lot of bad books. I definitely did read some bad books, but I didn't read a lot of bad books. I read a lot of good books. 25 is a big number. A lot of them were short stories. That kind of explains some of that. As it's been a couple of months since I've read a lot of these, I'm pretty much just going to tell you what the book's about, anything I remember about it, like a big loop. Do you remember anything? And what I rated it. And at the beginning we'll talk about things that did not go on the bingo board from hell, and at the end will be books that did go on the bingo board from hell. I'm learning new ways to separate these things. Will it work? I don't know. You'll let me know. Right? Alright. The first thing we need to talk about is The Wild Hunt. Wheel of Time, book number 2. I DNF'd this. So here's the deal. I liked the first book. I gave it like a 3-something stars. I was about 40% into this and I was liking it, but there are so many characters, so much happening, all of these like big overarching people that I have to remember and plot lines that I have to remember, and it is very slow for me. I'm not getting rid of these. I am doing a soft DNF, which I never do. Basically my plan is to take some time. I have a lot of bigger projects that I have going on this year that we've talked about, like trying to read whole series. There's several like large projects that I have going on, and I don't think doing those and also trying to do all the readathons that I've already like committed to and trying to read these at the same time is conducive to me enjoying this story. So I bought the first 3 books. I am going to hold on to these, but it probably won't be a while until I get into these and actually like get into these. I'm probably going to finish my read through of Sanderson's Backlist before I get back to these. So this probably won't be until like a 2026-ish project. I'll probably have to reread the first book when I get to that. But yeah, it's just not, it is not the time. Now is not the time for these. So a soft DNF, which I never do. At 2 stars, we have Every Value Break by Peter Swanson. This was not it. It was not the book. It was not the time. This follows a woman who, prior to her marriage, she had a one-night stand, I think on her like bachelorette party weekend, whatever, which of course she doesn't tell her husband. They get married. Their agreement was that she could have any wedding she wanted, but he would be the one who would decide their honeymoon. He picks the honeymoon to be this like getaway island where him and all of his dude bros go normally, and the book goes exactly the way that you think it's gonna go. I'm tired of rich white dudes being the bad guy. Not because I don't think they deserve to be the bad guy. That's not what we're talking about here. I'm tired of the rich white guy being the bad guy because it's so fucking predictable. Like, you know what would throw me for a fucking loop? You know what would throw me for a loop? If the generational wealth cis het white man like strolled in and saved somebody who was like my brain type of thinking woman. Like, if that guy, you know, went from being like, you know, the guys that they always are in the books, and like he changed during the book, like he had some character growth and he became the savior, like that would be a plot twist. The generational wealth white guy, cis het white dude being the bad guy, that can we move on from that? That is the real world. I want something, I want to be in a world of fantasy. I want to be taken out of the real world, and you're just feeding me the real world, and that's not a plot twist. First off, the husband being the one who committed the murder is never a plot twist, and the rich white guy being the bad guy is never a plot twist. If those are the only plot twists in your mystery thriller book, you need to go back to the drawing board and try again. If the rich white dude is also the husband, yikes. Ugh. Yeah, no, that book was a giant no for me. That I can't recommend that to anybody. Next we have my lowest rated Sanderson of all time at 2.5 stars, Sixth of the Dusk. I think this is the one that I read at the wrong time. I think this one is the one that I read out of order, maybe. I didn't like it. So, it was just a short story. It's part of the Arcanum Unbounded collection. I've been trying to read everything in order, like all the short stories and everything. And that book was not it. So, and then at 3 stars we have The House by Raylan Drake. This was at the end of at the end of 30 and 30 when I was trying to find short things to read. And I found this book from my library that was available. It was short. I think it was supposed to be mid-grade, and it's about these kids that go into this house that's supposed to be a haunted house. They're dared to go into it, and they find out like what's haunting the house, and it was fine. Like, there was nothing wrong with it, but there also wasn't really anything good about it, if you will. In the same vein, at a 3.25 stars, The Girl on the Porch by Richard Shizmar. That's what I'm going with. This one was short and interesting, but there was no like plot. So it's about this girl who's seen knocking on the door of this family. They have like a door camera, but their camera has been broken. Like, the doorbell has been broken for a while and it doesn't work, but the camera still does the recording. Their neighbor says, "Hey, I seen someone knocking on your porch last night. You know, were you able to help them? Or, you know, was it somebody that you knew, whatever?" And they're like, "Oh, we didn't hear anybody." So the wife checks the doorbell camera, and there is in fact a woman knocking on the door. And I think she has like chains on her wrists or something. Like, you can tell that this obviously was a woman who had been in distress, but she is gone. And so they start posting this video of her on the news, trying to figure out if anybody knows who she is, or if she's been found safe, whatever the case may be. And so it's a very short story that follows like this into, and at the end of the story you're seeing like who's arrested for her captivity and whatever had happened to her. And it just, like, there was really no plot. And also the guy who lived in the house, like the police officer who was investigating it, like, was just telling him shit that a police officer would never tell a person who wasn't like privy to the case. Like, it's not something that somebody outside of the police force would know. Like, she was just randomly telling him like all of the ins and outs of like their investigation and everything they'd been finding and all this stuff. And then like she didn't tell him who the killer was, but she basically was like, "Watch out for later today because you're gonna see me and we're gonna be arresting the guy." And I'm just like, this would never happen. And there was just like no plot other than that. It was very just bleh. A very interesting premise, and I think could be done very well. Just, it wasn't in this case. Then we get into the 4 stars. We have One by One by Frida McFadden. This is kind of, Frida McFadden does this thing where she like takes other people's story ideas and then does a thing with it. And sometimes she flips it on its head and sometimes she doesn't. This is much like One by One by Ruth Ware, which is also based off of what the heck is that name of that book by Agatha Christie that I've read? I can only think of the names that we don't call it anymore. I can't. It's this one. There's also a movie. Anyway, let's move on. It was actually really good. I enjoyed it. I was pretty obvious kind of what was going on. But there was like a plot twist, and the end I think was really good. Like the way that you're getting the point of view of the killer throughout the book, which I love. But you never really knew who the killer was going to be. It actually did a really good job of keeping them like gender neutral, not putting in anything that really kind of gave you clues as to who they were based off of what you knew of the other characters. And I really liked the like plot twist at the end where they were like, even though XYZ didn't go exactly the way I had planned, this is what my plan actually ended up doing. So, and I was like, you know what? I like that. It was good. Also by Frida McFadden, because I did a Frida McFadden deep dive last month because I was trying to read, well, in April, because I was trying to read things that were short and quick, and her books are definitely short and quick. I read The Gift, which is a short story that is based off of The Gift of the Magi, which in The Gift of the Magi, it is a story based off of a husband and wife who love each other very much, and they want to get each other a Christmas gift, but they don't have money. And so the woman cuts off all of her hair and sells it to buy her husband a chain for his pocket watch, and he sells his pocket watch in order to buy her decorative combs for her hair. It's based off of that. It's very twisty. It had a very good plot twist. It's a short story, but the plot twist was great. Loved it. And also Messages from the Dead by Darcy Coates, which is a short story part of the Gravekeepers series. So if you've read any of the Gravekeepers series by Darcy, you know that it follows a woman who doesn't have any memory of who she was prior to finding herself running through the woods with these men chasing her, and she's able to hide with the help of a pastor at a church, and he gives her a job there because she can see ghosts, and she's able to help them cross over. So she's given the job of helping the ghosts in the cemetery around the church cross over, and he lets her stay in the old groundskeeper's cottage. And so she does. This is a short story that takes place, I think, after book 2, in between books 2 and 3. It was good. I liked it. Oh, look, a book I actually own. Out of 4.25 out of 5 stars, we have The Cat Who Saved Books by Sasuke Natsukawa. This book, I highly recommend this to anybody who does reading for content creation. If you are a booktuber, if you're a bookstagrammer, if you are a book talker, if you write reviews for any reason, you have a book blog, whatever it is that you do, I highly recommend to read this book. This book follows our main character who he lives above his grandfather's used bookstore. His grandfather passes away. That is the beginning of the story. And he is approached by this cat who wants him to help the cat save books. And they have to like go through these little kind of situations where people are doing things to books that will irrevocably, that's what we're going with, change the course of history with books. For instance, there's a guy who is trying to like shorten books down as much as possible. He goes, like, he'll read a book hundreds of times, taking out anything that he doesn't think is important to the theme of the story, and basically just makes it into a sentence. And so you can read this one like longish sentence and have the, like, you just read that, you don't have to read the book. And so they're trying to like save books by getting rid of that guy doing that kind of crazy thing. And so it's kind of that kind of thing. And it does really talk about like using books as a possession, and using books, you know, I read 25 books this month and maybe I shouldn't have read 25 books this month. Kind of that kind of thing. So it was interesting. I really liked it. It was definitely something that, as I said, I recommend to anyone who reads books for content creation. I lied. Messages from the Dead was a 5-star from Darcy Coates. The 4-star was The Cathedral, which is a short story. Listen, I'm lost. It's fine. Darcy Coates abound. Okay, now we have some 5 stars along with the Darcy Coates that I was wrong about. The next is Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell by Brandon Sanderson. I loved this short story. I'm not sure where it's actually connected into any of the worlds, but I really enjoyed the way that this was told and the world building that we had in this book. Loved it. short story rather. It was great. Loved it. And my 50th book of the year was Nick and Charlie by Alice Oseman. I wanted to have my 50th book be a book that I really enjoyed. So I picked something that I knew I would enjoy. My 49th book was Heartstopper Volume 5, and I was like, I should have saved that for my 50th book because I know I would have, I knew I was going to enjoy that. And then I was like, Nick and Charlie story. Let's do that. So I definitely enjoyed my 50th book of the year. If you've been here on BookTube, you know what Heartstopper is about. I don't need to tell you what it's about, but I can also tell you that Heartstopper Volume 5 got a 5.25 out of 5 stars. You know, I love the series. I talked about this at length in my 2-hour video that no one will ever see because there's no volume. Basically, my point was, if you have a teen who is in high school, even if they're not dealing with any of the LGBT issues that a lot of these characters deal with, this does a really good job talking about the pressure of choosing the correct college, making sure that you're picking the right college for yourself, not for your parents, not for your friends, not because you don't want to be away from your boyfriend or girlfriend, making a lot of really, like, you make a lot of big decisions in that year of your life. When you're very young and your brain is not fully developed, and I wish I had had something like this to read in my senior year of high school because I would have made a lot of different decisions than what I did. Not to say that I'm not happy with where I am in my life, but I do have a lot of regrets about choices that I made in that time period, and I definitely would have made different choices had I had something like this that kind of gave me an idea of what choices, what options I had. I really enjoyed this book. It deserves the 5.25, which, if you don't know, means it's perfect. There is nothing about this that I would change. And now we get to talk about the bingo board from hell, which means I have to move in one direction or another. So our first square is 12 Books by 12 Friends. I did not read anymore, so that is still where it was. I don't know what the number is, but it did not move. The middle square should be at 4. I don't know what it's at, but it should be at 4 because at the end of April, we are still under 60 books. I believe the number that we ended with at the end of the last book haul was 33. So that number is fine. For new releases, we added 2 this month, the first of which is Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. This is the sequel to Godkiller. I gave this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. This was not as good for me as Godkiller. Godkiller was almost perfection. Sunbringer rather, it didn't do the thing for me that I wanted it to do. If you've read Godkiller, you know that there are 4 main characters. Someone's going to tell me all of their names. Kissin, Sketty, Inara, and Elagast. And this book, because of the ending of book 1, they're really not together very much, and I think that them being together is what made the first book so good. This is kind of the same thing for me as the issue that I had with Legendborn and Bloodmarked, because the essence of those characters is what made the story for me, and once you take those characters away from each other and they don't have that just vibe that they have with each other, it lessens the enjoyment for me, and it made things move kind of slow. I did still enjoy it. It's still a 4-star book. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still a great book. I also thought this was a duology. It's not, clearly, by the end of this, so I guess probably because of the popularity of book 1, it got bumped up to a trilogy, which then makes sense for why I felt like this book dragged a little bit, because that means they made this a middle book in a series, and those always kind of drag, but it's fine. I still really had a good time. I enjoyed it. It's the Illuma Great Special Edition, so it's gorgeous, and it got me a spot on my bingo. So also in new release land, we have The Hollow Dead by Darcy Coates, which I gave a 4.75 out of 5 stars. This book really took it to some places that we've been waiting for it to take since book 1. I'm not going to tell you what the series is about because I just told you what it's about, a few books ago. But this is book 4 in the series, and I had a fantastic time reading it. We got a lot more character growth, character development, relationship development, and I had a fantastic time reading this book. For library books, I read A Death in Door County by Annalise Ryan. Did you get your library reading blog for this book? No, I do believe you did not, because I believe that also was one that was at fault of losing all of the audio quality. If you remember, in the first episode of the series, there was a book that I liked, that I wanted to read, but I found out that it was not the first book in the series. It was actually the second. Death in Door County was the first book in that series, so I had to request it. It came in, I read it, I gave it a 3.25 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy it. I think it's not necessarily the type of book that I normally read. It was a bit more like, it was a bit more mystery than I like, a little less thrillery, but it did have to do with like cryptids and things like that. And there is like this big, like weird twisty murder that happened in the past of the main character that I'm really interested in seeing more about. Basically, the story follows our main character, who is a cryptozoologist, and she also owns a bookstore. She's approached by the police and asked to help investigate these murders that are taking place around the lake. Is it Lake Michigan? Maybe. It's in that area. It's one of the Great Lakes. I say as someone from Ohio. It's in that area. An area the size of Australia. Anywho, yeah, she's asked by the police to help investigate this murder because they think that they want to rule out the fact that it may be something like the Loch Ness Monster. So then she's put onto this case and she's trying to help them investigate it, and we just follow along with that. I knocked it out of the park this month with my physical backlist, so let's go through those that we get to mark off. First, we have Behind the Red Door by Megan Collins. I gave this a 3.75 out of 5 star. This follows a girl who grew up in a household where her dad was like a psychologist and a novelist, and he did really weird things to his family where he would like make them be upset by something and then be like, oh, I was just kidding. This was for the experiment. This was for my project. He would, you know, say things like, oh, your favorite toy, whatever it was, I broke it. Or he would like say, let's go for a walk in the woods. And like, he would drive her to this place. And then once she got out of the car, he would like just peel off. But then he would leave her there for like 5 minutes and then come back and get her and be like, I was just kidding. I was just using this for the experiment. And then he would take her to his office and sit her down for like hours and have her fill out this questionnaire about like how she felt and what she felt in the moment and all these things. So she grew up with a crazy fucking wackadoo for a dad. She is at her family home helping her father pack for a move because despite the fact that her father is a terrible human being, she loves her parents. But she's going back to help him move, and there is a book that's being published by a woman who, when she was a teenager, had went missing. And she sees this woman's picture and she's like, I think I know this woman. And so the book is like her trying to figure out how she knew this woman and how their paths may have crossed and what that might mean for her and her family and other things. The Outcast by Taryn Matthew. This was a 3.5. This is the prequel to the Summoner trilogy. So here's the thing. This book has characters in it that I absolutely love, but because it's a prequel novel that we got after the third and final book was published, we know how everything ends up for this. So there was no surprise, no suspense, no, like, there wasn't even just like a secret that we didn't know about in the beginning. I will say that there is a couple that get married in the third book of the series, and in this we get like their first meeting, them being friends when they were younger. So you kind of like get that friends to lovers aspect of it in this book. But this book follows the main character Fletcher from the first trilogy, his parents, and his mentor who was friends with his parents prior to their deaths. Small Horrors by Darcy Coates, 4 out of 5 stars. There were some good ones in here. There were some bad ones in here. It's covered in dog hair like everything else in my house. Just really, really short stories, like 1 to 2 page short stories. And like I said, there were some really good ones and there were some that were just like, okay. I really liked The Last Bus. Under House was my favorite. But The Last Bus was also good. I'm sure there were others in here that were good as well, but those are the ones that like 2 months later jump out in my memory. And the last book in this square, One of Us is Back by Karen M. McManus. And this is the third book in the One of Us is Lying trilogy. I gave this a 4.75 out of 5 stars. This trilogy follows a group of characters in the first book who are left alone with another classmate in a room in detention, and that classmate drops dead. And so the whole thing is like them trying to figure out who killed him, because everyone is blaming them for killing him, but the 5 of them are like, we know we didn't do it. We know none of the 5 of us did it because we were all standing there. So who actually did it? The second book follows them, but also like people on the outskirts of them. So like siblings, cousins, friends. And then this book is like everybody kind of all together. Next category is books that were book club books, and we have 3 of those this month. First is The Housemate by Freida McFadden. I really enjoyed this. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't necessarily anything like super shocking, though the end did get kind of weird. But it definitely had like just that vibe of being super fast paced, enjoyable, a very popcorny read. If you're going into this looking for like shocking plot twists, I don't think you're going to find that. But I do think that it definitely has some plot twists. I think the plot twists are entertaining. I think the story overall is very entertaining, and I enjoyed it. The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. This was the book club book for my local indie bookstore. I really enjoyed this. This follows Elwood Curtis, who's a black boy growing up in 1960s Tallahassee. He's unfairly sentenced to a juvenile reformatory called the Nickel Academy, where he finds himself trapped in a grotesque chamber of horrors. His only salvation is his friendship with fellow delinquent Turner, which, despite Turner's conviction that Elwood is helplessly naive, that the world is crooked, and that the only way to survive is to scheme and avoid trouble. Life at the Academy becomes even more perilous, with repercussions that will echo down the decades. Based on the real story of a reform school that operated for 111 years and warped the lives of thousands of children, The Nickel Boys is a devastating, driven narrative that showcases a great American novelist writing at the height of his powers. So the Nickel Academy, or the Nickel, what is it called? The Nickel, yeah, Nickel Academy. Basically, there is a graveyard at this place where they would basically say, if you had misbehaved, a lot of these boys were severely tortured for misbehaving or for not liking the sexual advances of the older men who were supposed to be protecting them, and they would be murdered, and they would just, the families would just be told, oh, well, they tried to escape, and they were killed while trying to escape. Some of them were told that they had escaped, and they were never found. So they were just technically on the run, but they were buried on the premises of this academy with no grave markers. And so we're looking at this from present day, from Elwood's point of view, and him remembering what it was like being in the academy. There is a plot twist in this book that happens half to 3/4 of the way of the book. And I kind of guessed that it was coming just based off of some of the things that was happening. But when I tell you that that plot twist really just rocks you, every emotion, this is one of the, like, the most, because it's based off of a true story, because it's based off of things that we know really happened, it really just packs a punch, really hits you emotionally. If you can handle the topics in this book, I cannot recommend it more as something if you're looking to see what things were like in the 60s, especially for young black men who were living in a segregated America and the justice system was not kind to them. It's very, very interesting book. In the land of completely different books, we have Crowd of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Throne of Glass series. I'm not going to tell you what this is about because you know what this is about. I am reading these as part of Beautifully Bookish Bethany's Mass Effect read-along. If you want more information about that, it is always linked in my description box down below. For as long as we're reading these, it will be linked down below. This was a reread for me. This is as far as I had read in the series originally. I am the only host of this readathon who has never read past book 2. Everyone else has read everything. So I'm having a fun time, like, figuring out, like, there are TikTokers that I'm obsessed with, and that a lot of their content is about this series. And so, like, I think that it's hilarious, but I don't always have, like, the full context of what the TikToks are about. I shouldn't say TikTok because I don't watch TikTok. I don't have an account. I watch them 6 months later on Instagram Reels. It's fine. Anywho, I'm old. But yes, like I don't have all the context, so like now as I'm reading through the series, I'm getting the context of the things that I've seen, and it's funnier, but also I know a lot of the bigger plot twists because I've watched these things already. It's fine. Anyway, it's a great series. I'm having a good time. Big books. Books over 500 pages? None. I did not read any. But what I did do was finish some series. So let's talk about that. Because I read the prequel to the Summoner series, the series is complete. I said when I read book 3 that even though it was the last in the series, I wasn't going to count that series as being completed until I read The Outcast, and I did. So, series 1 complete. One of Us is Back, book 3, last book in the series complete. And I read both books in the series, For Wires and Nerve by Melissa Meyer, which are part of the Lunar Chronicles. There are 2 volumes. I read them both this month. So I started and finished the series in a month. So at the end of April, our board should look like 1 book in 12 Books by 12 Friends, 4 months in Under 60, 9 of the 24 new releases, 3 of the 12 library books, 16 of my 24 physical backlist books, 9 of my 12 book club books, 5 of my 10 rereads, 2 of my big books over 500 pages, and 6 of 10 finished series. When I tell you that I smashed it this month. I mean, I read 25 books, it would be hard not to crush it, but I crushed it. I'm honestly not sure where we are with balancing the books. I really don't know. I feel like I should know, but I have no idea. Mostly because May is already over and I've already done that month as well, and I've bought a bunch of books, and I've gotten rid of books, and I've hauled more books. I said I don't know where we are. Okay, but I'm going to do my best guess at the end of May and call it, and we're just going to go from there at the end of May, and then we'll just roll with that until the end of the year when we can't get a new number, which is usually not the number that we started with, that we should have, but that's besides the point. That is all I have for today. If you made it to the start of the video, leave me a runner emoji, because I'm currently working on the Amazing Readathon, and it's like June 20th-ish when I'm filming this, so leave me a runner emoji. That is all I have for today. If you don't want to miss anything I have going on in the library, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell down below. And until then, I will see you guys next time. Bye!